This is the EWN Podcast Network.
Welcome to Late Boomers, our podcast guide to creating your third act with style, power, and impact. Hi, I'm Kathy Worthington.
And I'm Mary Elkins. Join us as we bring you conversations with successful entrepreneurs, entertainers, and people with vision who are making a difference in the world.
Everyone has a story, and we'll take you along for the ride on each interview, recounting the journey our guests have taken to get where they are, inspiring you to create your own path to success. Let's get started.
Hello, I'm Kathy Worthington, welcoming you to an exciting new episode of Late Boomers. Our special guest today has jumped out of windows and off buildings, fallen from tight wires and down flights of stairs, been burned in fires, held her own in fights with men and women, and driven cars off cliffs, just for example. What could that be? She's the stunt lady for the stars, Sandy Gimpel.
And I'm Mary Elkins. And not only that, at 85 years old, she's still jumping from buildings. She's won numerous awards for her work as a stunt coordinator and was the first Stuntwoman to become a second unit director. She's also a producer, an actress and dancer, and a fourth-degree Taekwondo black belt. And she's the author of the book, Stunt Lady, Falling for the Stars, and soon her cookbook, Falling for Food, will be published. Welcome, Sandy.
Thank you for having me.
Great to have you.
Please tell us about your background and how you got into show business and stunt work.
Oh my gosh. Well, Mom started me dancing when I was like 3 years old to keep me out of trouble. And seriously, she was very good about making sure that my sister and I were very busy so that we, didn't get into anything.
Did it work?
No, it did not work. I mean, I would come home with black and blue marks and she'd go, "Oh my God, what happened to you?" And I go, What are you talking about? Nothing. And anyway, the dancing, I just kept dancing afterwards. And she wanted me to go to school and become a teacher. And I actually went to school, got my applied arts degree, and certainly didn't want to teach. But what happened was there was an audition for a show out here in California called Pacific Ocean Park. It was a big theme park out at the ocean. And they were looking for dancers to be Jack and Jill and bring the people into the park. And so I went and auditioned because I knew a lot of my friends were dancers. So I went and auditioned for the show and didn't get the job and was very disappointed. And so I signed up to go to school to get the third degree, my third year of school. And a week later, I got a phone call from Miriam Nelson, who was our choreographer. And she said, "You still want the job?" And I said, "Absolutely." And she said, "Well, one of our girls is pregnant and she can't do it, so she quit. So the job's yours." So I did that show for 3 years as a dancer. And when the 3 years was up, I auditioned for The Pleasure of His Company with Fred Astaire and Debbie Reynolds as a dancer, and got in the entertainment business that way because I got picked to be one of the dancers on the show, and never looked back, and just went on working as a dancer, ending up doing 15 movies with Elvis Presley. I was one of his 5 dancers. And when he decided he wasn't going to do movies anymore and go back to Las Vegas and, do live shows, I was already in the industry, and I had been working, doing some background work and doing some acting. Working with Bill Bixby and a few other people. And I did Lost in Space. And what happened was Elvis wasn't doing a movie. So they sent me out to audition to stand in, which means when they light lights, set the cameras, you're standing in. And they needed a new stand-in for Bill Mummy, who was 11 years old. And so I auditioned, and usually all they care about is how tall you are and if the coloring is correct, and that's all they care about. Well, this audition, there was like 8 or 9 guys sitting at a table asking me all these questions about my background and my coordination and all of this. And one guy stood up and said, "So, have you ever thought about doing stunts?" And I swear to you on a Bible, I said, "What's a stunt?" Because I had no idea what he was talking about.
That's my next question to you. What? Not everyone in our audience knows what stunt work is or what doubling for an actor involves. So go on and tell us more.
Well, basically, what happened was his name was Paul Stater, and he was the stunt coordinator, which means he hires the stunt people. And he said, "You can stand in for Bill and stunt double him if you come to the gym 3 days a week, and we will teach you how to do stunts."
Wow.
And
Wow.
I was 22 years old, and I said, "Sounds good to me." And so
I wanted to ask you also, who were your mentors? So that was number one mentor.
that was my very first mentor, absolutely. But taught me how to do. Literally, I was going to the gym with 5 or 6 or 7 stunt guys that were in the Stuntmen's Association, and learning how to do fights, learning how to do high falls, learning how to sword fight. Just all basic kind of stuff that you need, to fall down. And the wire work came later in my, because they weren't doing a lot of wire work then. Everything was more practical. And I ended up on Lots of Space, not only doubling Bill, but I ended up doing the voiceovers. I ended up playing monsters on the show. And I never looked back. I mean, I just kept working after that. And there was really 2 people that doubled kids in those days. That one was myself, and one was oh goodness, I just lost his name. Anyway,
It'll come to you.
It was
a male.
He was a guy and me. Yeah. And the funny part was he was littler than I was. He was skinnier, and half the time he would double the girl and I would double the boy. So that's kind
great.
But yeah, so I just kept working, and I'm very blessed. No complaints. I absolutely love my life.
Well, tell us what it was like working with Elvis, and also tell us about some of the most memorable people and moments.
He was amazing. He was, just the most gracious person you'd ever meet in your life. And it was really interesting because there were, girls were coming and going and dating him, and, and everybody kept saying, "Well, did you date him? Did you date him?" And I never did, because basically I had a daughter at the time that was very young. She was like 2 or 3 years old, I guess, when I first started working with him. And I needed to work. I was a single mom, and I needed to work. And I watched the girls that dated him come and go. And I thought, I can't come and go. And his guys, his mafia guys, Joe Esposito and Charlie Haig, and those guys decided they liked me and they were going to keep me out of trouble. And so I kind of got connected more with the boys than I did, with him. And I got to go to rehearsals and sit in while they were playing, just working things out musically. I got to go play softball with them when they'd go play softball with out at Veterans Hospital. Elvis loved to play softball, and I'd go to the house in Bel Air and got to play games. And so I got to be in the inner circle, and more so than other girls did, because I was kind of like one of the boys, which was really nice.
You were very wise through your years.
Absolutely.
You didn't fall into that Hollywood starlet category.
Yeah. I was
amazing.
Really lucky, and you don't realize it when things are happening, especially in my business. You just go in and work, and you go home and you do your next job, and you don't think about it. You just realized later on in
And
life,
then you're lucky and you get to go play softball.
I know.
Absolutely. That's not a bad gig at all.
No, I
That's
mean,
really fun.
And you did what? How many? 15 movies with Elvis?
I did 15 movies. I was one of his 5 dancers that he just wanted back all the time. In fact, they were doing a picture at MGM it was called Chautauqua at the time. And I think they changed it to Girls, 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 or so it was one of the girls' movies. He hadn't done, he was between movies before they started that. So I was doing Coach and Betty's Father with Bill Bixby and doing a little acting part on it and standing in on the show. And the funny story is Elvis was coming back from lunch from the commissary, and Bill Bix and I were going to lunch, and we met in the middle, of the street on the lot, and they're talking. They were really good friends, and they're talking like I wasn't even there. And Elvis looks at me and looks at Bill and looks at me and goes, "What are you doing on his show?" And I went, "Well, you were busy and you weren't doing anything, so I needed to work." And he looked at Bix and he said, "When are you guys wrapping?" And he said, "Another week." And he goes back, "Okay, I want you to talk to the producer as soon as you wrap and you're back on my show." And he said, "Yes."
Wow.
So that was the kind of relationship we had. It was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Really good.
Yeah. Can you talk more about some of the more memorable people you've worked with or some of the moments in your career?
Who I've worked with, that's uncomfortable, huh? you know,
Yeah.
I've been very lucky. I mean, the Bixby was amazing to work with. I absolutely adored him. He was one of the good guys. And the ladies I've doubled, I've been, you have to double somebody that's close enough to your height. So I've doubled Debbie Reynolds. I doubled Betty White, Estelle Getty, Cloris Leachman. I mean, the list goes on and on. I mean, it's just I've been very lucky, very, very lucky. I can't complain at all.
That's so exciting. Well, in your book, Stunt Lady Falling for the Stars, I know that Bill Mumy and the director Johnny Martin and Beau Bridges wrote forwards to it. Can you talk about your book and working with them?
Yeah, Beau Bridges turned out to be an incredible friend of mine. He's he's like family. And I actually met Beau on Other Side of the Mountain. When we were doing Other Side of the Mountain, I'd actually worked with him before, worked with his dad, but never really got to know him until that show. And I got to direct second units for him. I got to coordinate for him. I got to do 7 Hours to Judgment where he directed it, and I kind of was his helper, his assistant. We did a show called Sins of My Father that Beau directed, and his mom was on the show, and his dad, Lloyd, was on the show. And basically what happens is the father pushes the mother down the stairs and, tries to get rid of her. And so I ended up doubling Beau's mom, which was really great. So that show was really amazing.
And you had to get pushed down the stairs.
I had to get pushed down the stairs, yes. I do that a lot.
Well, how do you do that? How do you prepare for that?
What I basically do is I have like a 8-inch wetsuit that I wear, that I put underneath my clothes so that instead of having to wear pads, elbow pads, knee pads that stick out, I put the wetsuit on and it covers up all that you could actually get hurt, where the pads aren't going to be. And so
how did you know that a wetsuit would protect you in a fall? Did someone tell you, or you discovered that on your own?
I didn't. I kind of figured it out myself because I noticed that a lot of times when you just wear your elbow pads, your knee pads, your back pad, you always get nailed someplace or hurt someplace that the pads weren't, like on your upper thigh where you can't cover it, or your shins. You wear shin guards, but then you'd hit them and it'd get hit in the back or somewhere. So I just kind of figured out, if I get everything covered up, I get protected. And it worked. It worked perfectly. A lot of stuff we learned,
Wow.
growing up in the business, basically, we learned the hard way. We learned it practical, and so it's kind of frustrating when the kids don't ask questions of the older stunt people, because we've done things already. There's really nothing new, and
Did you break a bunch of bones?
so no.
Yeah.
I broke my ribs a couple of times. My knees were messed. I mean, I've had, I feel like a bionic woman. I've had 2 knee replacements and a hip replacement. But
that'll take you out for a while.
no, it didn't. I worked 3 weeks after I had my right knee replaced, and drove the car 3 days later.
Well, that's good advice for older people, so you don't have to lay there for months.
I don't take a lot of pills. I don't take medicines and stuff like that. That you get your hip replaced, your knee replaced, they send you home with all these drugs. And I think the drugs make you feel worse than, granted you have to take some pain medicine, but I took Tylenol and it seemed to work for me. Now, I do have a high tolerance of pain. I can, ignore it pretty well. But,
yes, you have to.
If the knee replacements was wear and tear, like I'm a 4th degree black belt, and in Taekwondo, you do a lot of kicks, a lot of flying side kicks, a lot of kicks, all those snapping kicks, are hard on your body, and it's nothing you can do about it. But, thank God in this day and age, you can get it fixed.
Yeah. Well, backtrack a little bit and tell us more about your book.
My book.
Well,
let me show you my book.
Yeah.
Yep. Show us the cover. They'll see it on YouTube. But the cover, would you describe it, Sandy? It has a number.
Cover
it has you on it.
The cover has pictures of me being the salt vampire without the hood on. There's a picture of me doubling Bill, Mummy, on Lost in Space, and of me doubling Barbara Eden. Me playing an old lady, which they love a lot these days. And the girl in the center, basically, I had one of the gentlemen I know is a cartoonist, and he drew the cartoon of me. So I have that falling, and that's my book. And then inside, on the back, is a picture of me sitting on my car. It's got stories about all the shows I've been, or most of the shows I've been on, backstories, what happened on the sets, some of the, about the actors I've worked with, and my life, basically my life, and how I got started.
A charmed life.
Well, we also know you love to cook. So how did your cookbook, Falling for Food, come about?
Everybody keeps telling me to write a cookbook or do a podcast or do a show, and I keep going, yeah. But every time I cook, and I cook a lot, I put it up on Facebook or something, and kind of write out what I put on, how to make food. And
nice.
My dad and my mom both cooked. My dad owned a restaurant while I was growing up, and I kind of learned to cook from both of them. And the big problem with me writing this cookbook, which is taking so long, is I don't measure anything. And when you write a book, you've got to say half a teaspoon of this and one of that. And I just kind of throw things in and taste it to see if it tastes good, and go, okay, that's good. So I can tell you what I put in something, but the amounts is hard.
Well, do you have to go back and
recreate? You have to recreate all the recipes before you can put them in the
taste everything, and I know what I've put in everything, and I've got a pretty good idea of what, how much I've put in, so I can actually sit down and write down, which is what I've been doing, write down.
Well, do you have a specialty? Like, are you better at desserts or main
Italian
meals? Or...
food. No,
really?
I'm terrible at desserts because I don't know how to, I bake, not really great. My daughter's an amazing baker. But I can cook anything, really. I mean, I do cook a lot of chicken because I don't eat red meat. So I do eat some pork. I eat a lot of chicken. I eat fish, a lot of fish, and stuff like that. And I have old recipes from my mom and dad that we grew up on. So kind of cool because I have backstories about, her cooking and dad cooking in the restaurant and stuff.
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
fun.
Reminds you of home.
Hopefully I can get this done. I mean, I'm working on it.
You will. You will. You're known for your work on Star Trek and Lost in Space. You mentioned that a little bit, but please talk about that.
Well, basically what happened was when I was doing Lost in Space, they decided to do the pilot, The Cage, for Star Trek. And they called Paul Stater and said, do you have anybody that's not allergic to the makeup and stuff that we put on to make, glue on their face and stuff? And he said, oh, yes, well, I can give you Sandy next week. She's not working because she does monsters on our show all the time. So that's how I got Star Trek. And I got to do the Telosian because that was all silicone and, stuff glued to your face and stuff like that. And a lot of people break out from it. So I did that show with Jeffrey Hunter, and it, needless to say, didn't sell. And a year later, Star Trek called me and said, are you available? We want you to come back and do the Salt Vampire on Mantrap. So I went back and got to do that show with him. And never thought much about it, just went in and worked and then went on to do something else. And ended up being iconic, literally. I mean,
Yeah.
I do a lot of conventions and stuff, Star Trek conventions, because of those two shows. It's unbelievable to me.
Well, tell our audience exactly what you had to do as the Salt Vampire.
Well, as the Salt Vampire, I went in, and the first thing they did was they made a plaster cast of my head. And which means they put a wall cap on you, and then they put plaster literally all over you. And you have to breathe through a straw, and they let it harden, and then they pop it off and make a mask that fits only you. They make the costume for you and all of that, which was fine with me. I mean,
was it 8 inches thick so you could do stunts?
Pardon?
Was it 8 inches thick, like the wetsuit, or
It
so
was
you
about
could do the
an inch
stunts?
thick. Yeah, I mean it's maybe a little thicker than that. Even the plaster, they've got to have it thick enough that it's not going to break, so that they can put the silicone in and make the mask out of it. The funny part is a lot of guys, which they get claustrophobic and they can't let it even dry. They start pulling it off. But anyway, they made the costume for me, and they put me in the costume and put the head on. They sewed the head onto the the costume, and they took me out on the set. Now, there's a girl playing Nancy as the real girl, and me playing the monster. They had to do it that way because it took too long to switch back and forth. So they took a plastic and put it in front of the camera. And whenever they took me out or took her out, they would draw us in the camera and then take them out and put the other one in so it matched perfectly. And then take the plastic out and start rolling the camera again. Well, the problem with this costume was the salt suckers that I went to kill Shatner with were my fingers stopped here. The suckers were out here. So I would walk up to him and I'd hit him in the head with my hands because, you reach with your hands. You don't think about the suckers being way out there. And I no matter what I did, I couldn't figure out how to get it right. And I finally looked at Gene Roddenberry, who was literally on the set all the time, and said, can you do me a favor and take the hood, take this whole thing off, let me count my steps, let me figure out where I am. And it's just like a dancer. You figure out where you are, stepwise. And then I can do it. And the other problem was I couldn't see under the mask. Because if you look at the Salt Vampire, the snout went way out like this, which takes away all your peripheral vision, and your you can't see the floor. And the eyes were literally slits like that. They were not open enough. So he agreed.
So when you do the conventions, do you bring part of the costume
I wish
with
I had
you?
it. I don't have it. I've got pictures, tons of pictures of it, but I don't have the costume.
So you're just finding pictures of you as the monster when you go to the conferences, right?
Yep. I have it with me holding the
Conventions,
head,
yeah.
which is on the front of my book. And then I also have it, all put together with me getting killed. And anyway, he agreed. And I did everything I needed to do. And thank God Shatner didn't get mad because I was panic struck. Here I am, this nobody, and
Mhm.
hitting a star in the back of the head constantly. But, they
Oh, no.
I figured out where I was, and they sewed everything back together again, and it worked perfectly.
Did you have to do
That's
any
fabulous.
stunts as the salt monster?
Yeah, I get killed and I fall against the wall, and then to so I had to fall and do all that stuff in there, and it was a very tight quarters in there, very small.
Well, I wanted to ask you, how difficult was it for you to break the glass ceiling and become a director and stunt coordinator?
That okay, I had been coordinating, which means I've been running the shows as a stunt coordinator, hiring other stunt people, or making suggestions for them to hire. You technically don't hire. So I've been doing that a lot. I got lucky enough to do enough shows by myself that I kind of was coordinating myself. So I learned how to say, well, can we do it this way? And can we add another camera here? And got to be vocal enough that I was confident enough that I was okay as a stunt coordinator. And then I started coordinating shows. And I did Harbor Valley PTA with Barbara Eden and a bunch of shows at Universal because I was kind of at Universal. And Kate Mulgrew was doing Mrs. Columbo, Kate Columbo. And I got hired as their stunt coordinator. And what happened was they couldn't finish the show. There was just too many stunts on it. They had a 7-day shoot and they just couldn't finish it. So I got called in the office and my production manager said, okay, we're going to do a second unit, which means we're going to do a unit with only the stunts. And we're going to hire Bob, whatever his name was, to direct second unit. And we want you, since you know the show, we want you on the show. Make sure you help him. Well, me and my big mouth goes, I don't want to help him. I want to direct second unit. And they're not going to let you direct second unit. There's no way that you're going to direct second unit. And I said, well, I'm not going to help him that day. So you guys figure out what you want to do. And it was the end of the day. And I literally left the office, sat in my car and started crying because I figured I blew the stunt coordinating job too. Only nice thing happened was my production manager adored me and went to the Black Tower, as it was called at Universal, and talked to them. I don't know what he said, but at 6 o'clock that night or 7 o'clock that night, he called me and said, 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, sign your contract. We're buying you your DGA card and your second unit. And
yay, bravo for the brave women.
Yes. Kudos.
Yeah.
Sorry. It turned out really well because I ended up directing second unit on every episode after that and went on to direct second unit for Bo and, and other shows at Universal. So it was a good thing.
Fantastic.
So I really did break glass ceilings. The problem was at that time in 1980, they were very afraid to hire a woman to direct or to even stunt coordinate because there was a woman at a couple years before that, or a year, I think it was 2 years before that, at 20th Century Fox that was stunt coordinating a show. I'm not going to mention it because you guys know. But anyway, she was coordinating a show and she got fired. Now, guys get fired all the time. They go on and get another show. Well, she sued Fox. And every production company was afraid to hire a woman that they were going to, if she did anything wrong or they had to fire her, she would sue them. So they,
Oh dear.
they were panic struck. With Mrs. Colombo, with Kate Colombo, I knew the producer that was doing the show. And when I went in to ask if I could coordinate the show, he hemmed and hawed and would look at me. Literally, would look at his desk and would not look at me. And I finally looked at him and said, "Well, you're afraid if you fire me, I'm going to sue you guys?" And he, under his breath, he kind of went, "Yeah." And I said, "Look, I'll tell you what. If I do anything wrong, you can take me by the ear in your office and I will quit." And he said, "Let me think about it." And he knew me that I was pretty true to my word. And he called and said, "You got the show, you can do it." So that's kind of how it all came about, and the kept going, thank God.
You're brave.
Men, you have to be tough.
And have confidence.
Yeah. That blew my mouth when I should. Paid off.
So, on a totally other note, talk about some of the funniest moments in your career.
Oh my gosh. Probably the one that sticks out in my mind the most, and most everybody has seen it, is the BATA Awards with Sacha Baron Cohen. It was a few years ago, not that long ago, actually. And if you go on YouTube, it says Sacha Baron Cohen kills presenter. And basically, nobody knew what was going to happen. And I mean, nobody. And the room was full of every big star you can think of. I mean, George Clooney was literally sitting in front of me. Selma Hayek wheels me out in a wheelchair. I'm supposed to be 104 years old, the last living person to ever work with Charlie Chaplin. And I have a cane, and I present it to Sacha and tell him that he would love to have it if he was still alive. And he takes the cane and he twirls it and acts like Charlie Chaplin, leans on it, it breaks, he hits the wheelchair I'm in, and I go flying off the stage into the audience. Well, 3.5 hours of makeup later to make me look like I'm 104 years old, and nobody literally knew what happened. So we could not put pads on the floor. We couldn't do anything. I mean, the only pads I had, thank God, I had a long sleeve dress on. My stunt coordinator, Alex Daniels, was amazing. Made sure wardrobe dressed me so I could put a couple pads on. I had long sleeves and a big, long, sequin gown. And I was able to wear my elbow pads and my knee pads. And I took my shin guards and put them on the back of my legs because I was afraid the wheelchair was going to hit me because it was coming off the stage with me, which it did not. But I was a little worried about it. That was literally all the pads we had. And Alex actually sat at one of the tables to make sure that nobody turned their chairs into the little tiny space I had to fall. Because if they did, I would have fallen on them. And it worked perfectly. I mean, people, if you watch the video, you hear people gasp, and then they start laughing because they know it's Sacha. It had to be, funny. But it was amazing. It was probably the best thing the funniest thing I've ever done. I mean, I'm laying on the floor and he jumps down, turns me over and tries to give me mouth to mouth. And I'm biting my cheeks not to laugh, so that was really funny.
I remember that. I saw it and it was, oh my God, what just happened? And of course you had all this gray hair and you looked really old, makeup and all of that. So what are some of the most dangerous stunts you performed?
One of the what?
The most dangerous stunts you performed.
Well, the ones you don't think are going to be dangerous. Probably the one that sticks out in my mind the most is Bring 'Em Back Alive with Bruce Boxleitner, who was the TV show that he did. And we were out at Indian Dunes where the helicopter crash happened on Twilight Zone. And it's an Indian burial ground, and there's supposedly, it's cursed, supposedly. Anyway, there's a cliff, and it's 100 feet straight up, and they have a motorcycle with a sidecar hanging off the edge of the cliff. And the girl is supposed to be in the sidecar, and Bruce Boxleitner swings over on a rappelling line, grabs her, they swing back, the bike drops and explodes. That's the stunt. So we get there at 6 in the morning and get dressed, and I go out on the set, and the stunt double for Bruce wasn't done yet. They were still working on him. And they said, okay, we're going to put you up in the thing, and it's all rigged and don't have to worry about it. Well, the one thing I learned growing up with my mentors was check your rigging. There's nobody else on that rigging but you. If you're not happy, open your mouth, because they're not going to get hurt. You are. And I've always remembered that. And I said, okay, let me go take a look at the rigging and make sure I'm happy before we do this. Oh, no, you can't do that. We hired a mountain climber. It's all safe. Don't worry about it. I said, I'm not getting on it unless I see it. Well, if they could have fired me, they probably would have, because that took time. That was 20 minutes to get up on the other side of the mountain to where it was rigged. Anyway, they finally agreed, because I wasn't going to get on the rig. And I called, they called the stunt guy down, and he went with me. We got to the top of the mountain, and there is an eye hook in the ground, huge eye hook, with the repelling line attached, and the motorcycle attached with a trip on the motorcycle so it'll fall. There's no backup ties on anything. So we had enough repelling line that we were able to wrap it around a tree that was close enough. The water truck that was up there would not let us hook up to him. And we backup tied the repelling line. That's all we could do. And went back down. They took the cherry picker, got me up 100 feet in the air on the sidecar of the bikes. There's no rigging on me at all. I'm just holding on to the bike. Stunt double gets on the repelling line. They roll the cameras. He swings over, grabs me, and we're supposed to swing back like this, right? We swing back like that. And the bike drops and explodes. And it's interesting how time slows down when you're doing a stunt. And I remember, and never forget, as long as I live, literally, how all I could think was, oh my God, the repelling line got stuck in the weeds. And, you forgot that it was retied. And you're holding onto this, you're trying to hold on to the mountain and think, well, you'll just, climb down 100 feet of mountain. And it's shale and it's coming off of your hands. And this literally probably took seconds, and it felt like minutes. Yelled down to the crew, get us down now. And I remember looking at the crew, looking down, and they're standing there with their mouth open, looking up. And Gary, the stunt double, yells, and they moved. Everybody started moving. I mean, like I said, it took seconds. It felt like minutes. Got us down. Eye hook came out of the ground. Now, if we had not tied that back up, we would not be doing this interview today.
Right. Oh.
So that's what makes things dangerous. That's literally what makes it dangerous.
Right. And also, all during that time, you were a single mom. So was it difficult to be in a business that was so
I never thought of that.
And required you to work?
I was never really that afraid of things.
You didn't? Those long hours you were away from her and
that's
stuff,
true. I
but you're
was
working
very blessed.
on
My sister took care of her a lot. I had a girlfriend that her husband was an assistant director, so he did the Hulk and things like that. So and they lived very close, so took care of her a lot too. Even I was very blessed as people, close friends and family, taking care of her. There's not much you can do about the hours. They're long, and they're night. A lot of them are night shoots. Night shoots actually better, because then she would be sleeping, but somebody had to pick her up from school and things like that. But it didn't matter really what you did in our business, because when I did Coach Vetti's father, our script supervisor, her son was young, and she would have to go pick him up from school every day because she didn't have anybody. So I would hold script for her while she was gone for the hour to go get her son to bring him back. So we all kind of go through, different phases of problems, and you just figure out how to work them out.
Yeah.
You had such a strong community around you, it sounds like, and you've lived such a rich and exciting life. And what would you like our audience to have as a takeaway today?
You
Do you
know,
have any special advice?
I got to tell you,
What?
everybody says, what are you going to do when you grow up? Well, first of all, I'm never going to grow up. I don't want to grow up. But if you don't stop, you know, I've just seen too many people retire and then sit on the couch and don't do anything. And they get old in a year. It's just unbelievable to me what happens to them. I mean, if I'm not working, which, you know, there's times in our business it's rough and you don't work all the time. I go to the gym 4 or 5 days a week and make sure I'm working out all the time because I've got to keep my body in good condition. And, you know, you drag yourself to the gym, but once you're there, you feel pretty darn good, you know, and it keeps you vital. You know, if you don't stop, even if you can't go to the gym and you go out and walk, you know, walk and keep your body moving, it's going to keep you younger. And I eat as healthy as I can. We all screw around and splurge, of course, but but as a general rule, I mean, I eat pretty healthy. I eat vegetables and, you know, fish and chicken and salads and stuff like that. But I don't eat fast food. I don't drink Cokes and Diet Cokes or any of that stuff. I haven't had any of that in years. It's just, you know, keep moving.
Keep moving is the best advice.
Yeah, it's great. Keep on keeping on. I love it, Sandy.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. You've got some really great advice for all of us out there at every age, really, not just people who are older. Our guest today on Late Boomers has been Sandy Gimpel, stunt lady for the stars, author, producer, stunt coordinator, and director. You can learn more about Sandy through her website, sandragimpel.com, and that's SandraGimpel.com. And you can meet her at her Star Trek tours throughout the United States. There's so much more that I could ask you that I'm sure our audience would love to know. So hopefully you'll come back and do another podcast with us.
Thank you so much.
And tune in next week when we'll be meeting another exciting guest, Rhonda Britton, who will share some great tips. Please subscribe to our Late Boomers podcast on YouTube and take us along in the car and on walks on your favorite audio platform. Let us know what gets you inspired. We're on Instagram at I am Kathy Worthington and at I am Mary Elkins and at Late Boomers. Please tell your friends all about us. Thanks again,
Sandy. Thank you
so
much. I appreciate you having me.
Great.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you for joining us on Late Boomers, the podcast that is your guide to creating a third act with style, power, and impact. Please visit our website and get in touch with us at lateboomers.biz. If you would like to listen to or download other episodes of Late Boomers, go to ewnpodcastnetwork.com.
This podcast is also available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and most other major podcast sites. We hope you make use of the wisdom you've gained here and that you enjoy a successful third act with your own style, power, and impact.